All right, today I wanted to talk a bit about what I liked about the Rings of Power, because people have said, Eric, you're such a negative Nancy. You're such a Debbie Downer. All these girls' names, I don't get it. Just because of my long and beautiful hair. But no, some people have suggested, very few, but some, and I want to entertain this, but what did I like about the Rings of Power? I've said a lot of things about what I didn't like. There's a lot to not like, even though I started off enjoying it and quickly decided that it was not for me. But there are some things I liked. So let's see. I think that while the score was overused, like there's too many scenes where it's like dramatic music, but the scene itself isn't that dramatic. I think that that's really a flaw of the writing. Like they're creating this moment that the showrunners and the writers really want it to be this big dramatic moment, so they want the music to match, but it's not. It just doesn't work. But the score itself, I thought, was quite nice, and with a better script behind it, I think the score would have been just fine. It had that feel of a dramatic movie score, but over the course of 8-hour-long episodes, that it started to where, started to get a little, like just a little much. But I thought it was a good, I did enjoy. There's Bear McCreary, and I think he's a great composer, and I think he did a great job here. And with a better script, with more earned moments, I think that soundtrack would have been a lot more appreciated. I liked the dwarves. I thought they did a good job with the dwarves. I didn't like the dwarven storyline. I think they really bungled the whole Mithril thing. I would have much preferred to see the dwarves discovering Mithril and, having this, like, boomtown thing go on. Like, holy crap, we've got all this Mithril. We are going to sell it to the elves. We're going to, and so you could have had this great storyline with the dwarves becoming, overly greedy, as dwarves can become. But I did like the dwarves. I thought they did a good job with how the dwarves were presented, with their costumes. I thought Khazad-dûm at first was really cool when they showed kind of the bigger open areas, and then they kept the rest of the story kind of into very closed spaces, and I thought that was kind of a waste of what could have been. I liked the bigger, more open, more kind of vastness of Khazad-dûm, and I wish they'd showed more of that. But the dwarves themselves were great, and I liked Durin. Again, I didn't love the arguing with his dad about this dumb shit all the time, but I liked both Durin and the Elder Durin. I liked Disa. And I just thought overall the dwarves were one of the highlights of the whole show. Which brings me to Elrond. Durin and Elrond's relationship was one of the few relationships in the show that felt like a genuinely affectionate friendship. So many of the relationships in this show were built on arguing and bickering and this constant sort of contrived conflict. And there was some conflict early on with Durin and Elrond, but it was resolved quickly and in a genuine and affectionate way, which led to an even better and deeper relationship between the two. That it was often humorous and sweet, and felt like what I would expect in a Tolkien adaptation or a Tolkien fan fiction or whatever. And Elrond himself, I know the actor who plays him is a little odd looking, but I don't want to judge people by their looks. I mean, the actor who plays Elrond in the movies is a little odd looking too. So, he's the forehead Elrond, and in Rings of Power, it's the chin Elrond. But who am I to talk? I liked him. I thought he did a good job. I thought he portrayed a very likable young Elrond. Very much the diplomat and the guy who gets things done, but very sincere and just very. He felt very elvish to me, and I liked him over the course of the whole series. And I felt like he was a little wasted on this story, unfortunately. I liked the stranger. I didn't like that they kept him in that mystery box for so long, and I thought they really bungled the confrontation with the three witches and his whole line, "I'm good," and all of that. And I really think they could have done a lot of things differently with him, but I thought he was an interesting character, and I liked the actor who played him. I know that the Astari didn't come as wizards to Middle-earth. At least Saruman, Radagast, and Gandalf didn't come in the Second Age. But that doesn't bother me. It just doesn't bother me that much. I'm cool with the idea that they showed up at different times throughout the history of Middle Earth and then would leave and come back again. But I liked him, and I think that they were close with the Harfoots. They did a lot of things wrong. They bungled the Harfoots quite a bit, but if they hadn't, I did like Nori. I think they could have done so much more, and maybe in the second season they will. But that was all right. At first, I liked Arendir, but I feel like that whole Southlands plot was just such a total waste and such a clusterfuck that by the end I didn't like Arendir anymore. He just didn't do much except for sort of pout, and that's too bad, because I actually thought that he felt very sort of like a mysterious elven ranger type. Doesn't talk much, but badass fighter. They just kind of undermined a lot of those qualities of Arendir. I think he has potential still. Certainly my favorite of the characters in the Southlands plot, because Bronwyn is just terrible, and Theo is even worse. Those two are just everyone in this, the whole Southlands. It's like when the volcano erupted, I was clapping and cheering. It's like, yeah, down with the Southlands. Screw those guys. Adar, the elven orc, half elf, half orc, one of the elvish originators of orc kind, and like father to the orcs and enemy of Sauron, but also still an evil guy. He was great, and the actor who played him was the same actor that plays Benjen Stark in the Game of Thrones show. I thought that he did a really fantastic job, and almost like too good of a job. Like his acting and his portrayal of Adar was so many leagues above like Morfydd Clark's Galadriel, or like any of those characters that show up. I thought he did just a phenomenal job, and again was just kind of like wasted on this show. In some ways, I felt like his portrayal of Adar and some of his lines were not just calling out Galadriel, but calling out the show itself. So there's a lot of, and there still is potential with his character. So I liked him. I liked Charlie Vickers as Halbrand. I just think that the whole Halbrand storyline was so screwed up. Again, I keep saying, like, I like this character, I like this actor, but the story was screwed up, right? So this is kind of the running theme throughout this video, I guess. I liked Halbrand. I thought he was interesting. I think if they had made him a smith rather than a king and had played their cards a little bit differently, he could have been a fascinating character, and maybe it would have been cool. Like really, they could have had him, maybe encounter Galadriel not in the middle of the ocean, but in some town in the Southlands or whatever, and he could have found some reason to come back with her to Eregion, and that way he could have met Celebrimbor, and then in the next season or something, maybe he could have, gotten in the good graces of Celebrimbor and eventually become like his apprentice or something, or he could have had all these new techniques or something that he shared with Celebrimbor, and then eventually could have been revealed as Sauron, and that could have all worked well. But it just the amount of coincidence and contrivance and silliness that went into his storyline really diminished what I thought was a character with real potential, and a good actor. Again, I thought he did a good job with that character. Unfortunately, like with all like they tried really hard to make like strong, badass female characters, and other than Disa, who I thought was great, I feel like they really screwed up most of their female characters. I think it's this problem with trying too hard. Galadriel being the chief example of this, where she's just so goddamn obnoxious the whole time. Like, I don't know. I don't think Morfydd Clark was the right casting choice, for one thing, but I think even if they had picked somebody who was really perfect as Galadriel, and if they'd given her that part, it would have also been just ruined. They needed to either create a different elven warrior, younger, more brash, less ancient, less, or they needed to just write her completely different. I don't know. I think ideally I would have liked to see maybe even like her daughter as that character, but still written to be less of a Karen and more of a. You can write a tough female warrior character without having her be just so brash and unpleasant with everybody. Like you can make you can make a strong female character without having her be just so unpleasant all the time. Muriel was fine. Of the boss girls that they had in this show, she's the least obnoxious. They just didn't really know what to do with her. She had no reason to go with them to the Southlands. She's the queen. Her job is to stay there and rule. Elendil's daughter, who was made up for the show, does basically nothing. And then Bronwyn, I just don't understand. Like, if you're going to, they don't know what they're doing with these characters. Again, if she's just a healer lady, then her becoming like the general of the Southlands is very jarring and strange. It's unearned, and it's weird to see her go up on the podium and ask for the people to follow her into battle. It's like, who is this chick? She's the healer chick. Like, have her do some healing stuff. Have her, she could still be an important character without making her like the fighter that saves Arendir and then gets shot through the chest but survives and is just fine and is always totally put together. They just don't seem to know what to do with their female characters in this show, and that's a shame, because I mean, if you're gonna, like, it's true there aren't a lot of female characters in the Lord of the Rings trilogy itself. There are some great characters, but there's not as many. So it would have been cool to have some interesting and compelling female characters added to this show. They just didn't know what to do with them. And it's part of it is the agenda stuff. They have to check these boxes to make female characters a specific way, but they ultimately end up being just flat and uninteresting. That's, again, I think Nori and Disa were probably like my favorite of the female characters in this show. Yeah, so I'm getting back into what I don't like about it, but I thought I should touch on that because I realized that most of the characters I mentioned that I enjoyed were male characters. But that's because I don't think they were trying so hard with a lot of the male characters to make them likable. There's also terrible male characters like Elendil and Isildur were both very, very, very obnoxious, and they just fought all the time. They just argued with each other the whole time, and all of Isildur's friends were obnoxious. The Numenorians were just obnoxious. All of them. Every single damn one of them, unfortunately. Which is not how they should be, The ancestors of Aragorn should be a little less obnoxious. I thought that it was a mixed bag when it comes to special effects and sets and like environments and whatnot, and cinematography. I thought there were times that it was done quite well, and times when it was just like overly saturated colors, and there were certain areas like when the stranger first meets the witches, that whole area just looked like a movie set. It just looked fake. I thought I was watching The Wizard of Oz or something, especially when he rolls that apple like a football field away, and it just felt like a set off of The Wizard of Oz. But there were times when it looked quite good, and you could really see the budget. So mixed bag there. The actual scene where Halbrand is revealed to be Sauron, I kind of liked some of that. There was some cool moments there, like when this camera spins around and you see the reflection of Sauron and Galadriel in the water. The problem is that I don't like how they got there, or what the implications of that scene are, or how it works contextually with the rest of the story. So like, you can go and zoom in to just the scene and say, yeah, like, I think that they did a pretty good job filming that scene. Like, I enjoyed parts of that scene itself. It just wasn't earned. It makes Galadriel seem like an idiot, and there's just tons of other problems, like with the forging of the rings and stuff. Really didn't like the portrayal of Celebrimbor. Like, he should have been just as young as the other elves, young and beautiful and ambitious, and just to portray him as this old man when he's not even as old as Galadriel is so strange to me, and just an odd way of Like, Celebrimbor should have been, and I've said this before, he should have been the main character of the first season. And they should have explored his ambition, you know, the darkness he got from his grandfather, etc., etc. There's so much they could have done. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's what I liked. That's why I didn't think it worked all that well, even though I did like those things about the show. None of them function in the bigger picture of the show well. They're good bits that show that there was potential here, but that potential never saw the light of day. So, what did you like about the Rings of Power? Come on, there's got to be something, right? I know a lot of my viewers on here just really didn't like that show at all. But I think that there's probably something in there that you did. So if there's something that I missed or that you agree with me about or that you disagree with me about, please leave a comment. And I totally forgot to mention one of my favorite parts about Rings of Power, and I can't leave this out. I wrote a whole post about this. The orcs. The orcs are great. The orcs are super great. They screw up the orcs in the battle. They make the orcs super weak and lame. But at first, and this is one of the things that drew me to the show in the first couple episodes, I thought the orcs were really, really great. The first scene where an orc shows up in Bronwyn and Theo's house and is actually quite scary and intimidating, I thought was a wonderful portrayal of orcs that made them seem a little less like just mooks you can mow down. And then the practical effects, the makeup, the way that they make the orcs look very real and very with a lot of variety. I thought that was great. I thought how Adar treats them and makes them a little more sympathetic. I thought that was really cool. I thought there was so much potential with the orcs that I was definitely rooting for them and for Adar. So I forgot to mention that, and it would be remiss of me not to. They end up making the orcs just as weak and pathetic as orcs typically are in fantasy, unfortunately. But they were onto something in the beginning, and maybe they can realize that maybe fleshing out the orcs even more and continuing with the great practical effects is one of the things that they should double down on and not just cast aside. So, okay, now I'm done. Peace.